Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and this is part 4 of the Ultimate build series where we are building the Ultimate Bi-plane from Krill Models. We have cracked on already, we've done the tail and the wings in the first couple of builds episodes. We started the fuselage last time round as well, so we're going to be continuing the fuselage today, getting the vents cut out underneath, getting the engine installed and hopefully getting that cowling on as well for the first time. Let's get started. Okay, so next up guys, I want to cut the holes out for the vent for the engine underneath the bottom of the fuselage. So to do this, I've got a template, so let me just show you. So here's the template, which was kindly supplied by Clive at Aerobatax. And the idea is that you've laid a template inside the fuselage to start off with, line up the, move my hand out of the way, line up the center line with the seam line, front and back, attach that down, and then where the crosses are, you can mark a couple of holes, then flip the model over and put another template on the opposite side, and then cut from the outside inwards. However, before I go ahead and put that in there, mark it all up, cut it out, what I want to do is actually reinforce the bottom of the fuselage first with some carbon. So I'm going to cut a sheet of carbon cloth exactly the same size as that template, and then before I use this template, I will epoxy in the carbon cloth into that space there, make sure it's fully dry, and then use template. The idea behind that is it just stiffens up the fuselage just enough to give it a little bit more strength, because obviously the gaps between these aren't that big by the time it's cut out. Oh, and just in case you're wondering why there's a double line as well, the idea is use the Dremel to the inside line and then hand file to the outside line to get you a nice edge. Right, let me get some cloth laid up. Okay, so first off we're going to use some decent epoxy, which is super thin to allow it to go into the cloth, and that's going to be weighed out. So as I mix out, we're weighing it out on some scales to make sure the mix is right. It's 130 mix, 100 resin to 30 grams of hardener. I've got a bit of finishing cloth which I'm going to put on top of the carbon, and of course this is the carbon cloth as well. So I've already cut a piece of carbon cloth and just offered it up inside and marked out where it's going to go, because obviously I can't see through the carbon cloth like I could when I had the template in there. So I've just marked a couple of lines here and at the front so I can still get the centre, and just down the edges so I know where that cloth's going to go. So next thing I need to do is mix it all up and get it stuck in. And there we go, that is the cloth laid up. As you can see, just about to see it's still wet, so that epoxy will smooth out as it dries. Then we'll let it dry, and then we put the template back in there and start cutting it out. So with that carbon now in place and dry, I'm going to use my template on the inside and also on the outside. So the idea is to line the template up with my markers, tape that in place, and then drill through on a couple of the crosses, front and back, spin the model over, and then I should be able to use those drill holes to line up the template on the other side. And there we go, just a couple of holes drilled, and I've just located a few screws for those holes to make it easier to locate on the other side. So now I'm going to flip the model upside down and use another template to line up those holes, and then I should be able to cut through. So plane now upside down, and you can just see tips of those screws coming through the 4 holes that I put. I did put a 5th hole in there, but I didn't put a screw through. So I should now get the other template and line that up, and that hopefully will work. And there we go, that is the template lined up. So obviously use the seam to line up the main centre line, but then also use the screws that are coming through to line up on the crosses as per the other side. So now comes the tricky bit. Yep, that was the easy bit so far. So I'm going to use a Dremel to the inside line all the way around, and then I'm going to use a file to go to the outside line all the way around. And obviously the paper's going to tear while I'm doing this, which is why it's a bit tricky, so I have to go extra careful, but I think going slow is the way to go. Let's see how long this takes me. I'll let you know soon. So there's the first cut on the first vent of 8, and just to show you, so I've just literally taken it close to the line I have also just sanded that very briefly to see what it's like to sand, and it's absolutely fine. So now I can sand out to the outer line and then repeat on all the others. I reckon there's a good couple of hours worth of work here. Let's see. Okay, so here we go guys, this is the first rough cut done. So as you see, I've taken all of them just to the inner line there. And then this is what it's actually going to look like. So here's one I've pretty much completely finished. It's about 1/2 mil away from the outer line, but I'll probably leave that there until I take the paper off, and then I'll probably just tie it up by eye once the paper's off. So now I'll get the other 7 in the same state. But I'm pretty pleased with that so far. And by the way, if you're doing this yourself, make sure you wear a mask, because obviously you're cutting through the composite material with the Dremel, carbon underneath as well. You don't want that stuff going in your lungs. Right, let's get this finished. Guys, I'm about halfway through this task at the moment of cutting these out, and I just thought I'd show you the tools I'm using. So Permagrit are the tools I've used for absolute years for files basically, so that's what I'm getting this clean edge with, and they come in a roll. But the actual two that I'm using out of the packet to do this job are a nice round dowel, which really helps in here, and also just a flat edge as well for in between. So a combination of those two is what's helping me get close to these lines. Right, let's get the other 4 done. So here we go guys, all cut out. Let's see what it looks like with the template removed. I've gone as close to the edge as I dare. Might just want a bit of tidying up, but let's have a look. Just a load of dust there. Let's do that quickly. It's definitely a messy job. Right, I'm pretty pleased with that. I might just use a little bit of fine sandpaper on my finger, just tidy these up a little bit, but do you know what? They are pretty good. Wasn't looking forward to that, but it's done. The only one that was really tricky were the front two. The reason why they're tricky is because you've got the tube in here for the lower wing. So when you're sanding down, you'll be careful not to keep hitting the carbon tube, whereas these ones you can go a lot quicker with. So these took a little bit longer to do, but just under 2 hours from start to finish. But I am happy with that. Okay, so it's time to go back onto the front of the model now. So you remember in part 3 we drilled the holes using the template, and I highlighted the template was a little bit too small, but we managed to get it right by double checking it. We couldn't put the engine on because I didn't have the right bolts, so I now have the bolts for the engine. So let's get this engine mounted and see what it looks like. And there we go guys, the engine's on for the very first time. So as per the last video, which I think was part 3, I'm using these pieces of plywood to get the right distance, and they're not glued together yet or protected obviously from the fuel, because I need to make sure that the cowling is right. So the next job really is to put the cowling on, but before I do that I have got to cut it out. As you can see here, looking very happy. I need to cut out center, leaving a ring, this slot here, over here as well on both sides, and possibly some vents underneath, which I might do separately. But let's just get this section cut out first so we can see the cowling fitted, and then we finally double check the engine's in the right place. Okay guys, a moment of truth. So I've just done a real rough cut around the engine here. Obviously I will tie this up to this line that I've drawn on, but I was really just desperate to see whether this alignment's right before I go much further. So to test it, I've got the spinner to hand. Just slot the spinner on, and you know what, I am pretty pleased with that. If I just look all the way around, it's pretty much spot on, and we've got a great spinner gap there as well of about 1.5 mil, maybe 2 mil. No, about 1.5 mil. So I'm happy with that. The engine is in the right place on the mount and everything, so that's spot on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to finish off cutting out the rest of the vents in the cowling. And there we go guys, that's the cowling cut out and looking very happy. We haven't cut out any other slots, air vents underneath at the moment, which I might do just under here going across. I'm just going to have a little think about that, but for now I think we'll say that's a good job done, and let's have a look at installing the tune pipes. Okay guys, so cowling's back off, model's obviously upside down here. These are the holes for the cans to go through and down. I've got one of them made up here, which you probably can't quite see because of the camera angle, but just to do a dry fit, there's obviously a support in the back here which I haven't got in yet for the pipe to rest in, but as you can see, just lining it up here, I'm going to need to adjust round here on both sides so these go through. Now, one dilemma I do have is whether this pipe should go on the other side. So in other words, this one should go on the left so that the exit is furthest one side. But I'm kind of thinking that it would look better if they're both close to each other, about an inch apart, coming out in the middle here. So I'm going to go this way around. So I'm going to cut out a section here on both sides and probably make this one a little bit wider as well so it doesn't fit through at the moment. So just bring this along and bring it back in, so along like this, then back across here. And hopefully be able to slide them in and bottom down. So back to the Dremel. Okay guys, so after much messing about, this is where we've got to. So the manifolds are on, screwed down tight to the engine. The exhausts are in, the cans are in. They're on the back support. The support's not glued in place at the moment, but it's in the right place. And unfortunately, the pipes don't come out far enough, which I think is kind of expected. So I just need to get some extensions on this to get them away from, well, obviously outside the fuselage would be a nice touch, but some extensions up here, probably angled away slightly as well. So if we put the cowling on, just loose about there, you can see they do come out through the right section here. So they're in the right place, they just need extensions on there. So I've ordered some extensions up to about this height, but at least I like the fact they are together rather than wide, so that's worked out well. Let's get those in place. So let's find out what we're going to do next. I think we'll check out the instructions. Okay guys, I think I'm going to install the ignition system next. So had the ignition system here. Obviously we've got the wires that go for power, receiver, and also into the engine itself. And then of course we've got the main leads here as well. So what I'm going to do is actually put this inside underneath this section here. So I'm going to cut two slots here, which can be used to put a strap through. This is going to go underneath there with some padding on it, attached to the top here, strapped up tight through the top. And then I'm going to put holes through on each side with a grommet, one for each spark plug, and then a hole through here as well for this lead with a grommet through it. So that's the plan. It's a couple of slots here, smallish hole, big holes on the side, and that will be up inside, out the way. Then we can worry about running the other wires all the way back to the power box unit later on. So let's do that before we do the servos. And here we go, the ignition is now installed. So two holes, one each side. I'm going to put a grommet in here. And this hole had to be 20mm wide, obviously, to get the head through. So grommet will go in there, sort of some on order. Put a grommet on top here with the wire coming out. I'll put a clip here as well, so this won't flap around, it'll be secured in place with a clip. And of course the other side. That's the strap, that's the only bit you can see going through for the ignition box itself. Let me just show you that as well. So the model now flipped upside down, and of course the can's removed temporarily. You can see the ignition box is down here. So at the moment it's just got the one strap over the top of it. I will put Velcro on the other side of it as well, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be more than enough to hold it in place, especially once the Velcro is the other side. That's not going to be going anywhere. So that just leaves two wires that need running. I'm probably going to bring them back up and underneath here. So they go underneath the fuselage, all the way through the middle of here, underneath, and back to where we have our tray. But I'll leave that for now because the next job is one I've been putting off, and that is to get the two servos in here. One for the choke, which is here, and the other one for the throttle over this side. and I just don't know how I'm going to do it. I have to make some sort of tray here without getting in the way of the bolts. Right, let me scratch my head. So guys, after much head scratching, I'm going to attempt to try and solve two problems in one go, or two things I need to do. So first of all, I need to mount the servos, and I need to mount the throttle and the choke servos. Don't really want to just stick them on the front, which is what Krill recommend. I'll show you that quickly now. Don't want to do that. And I'm also a little bit concerned about the way the engine bolts through just to the back of the carbon. So I've been thinking about a way of stiffening that up. So what I've currently prototyped, or I'm trying out, is this. So a piece of ply plate which the engine will bolt through to. So obviously the carbon front of the model will be here. Engine bolts through, and then I've got another piece of carbon on top for the servo sit in. And then I'll add, not this, but I'll add a stiffener to it. I think you can see that yet. Here, so it doesn't flex. And I'll slot that into the wood on both sides. And obviously epoxy it all in. So that will give me like a tray for the two servos. And it'll also give me a plywood plate that I can bolt the engine through. And now rather than using nuts on the back of the engine, I'm using these crown nuts, I think they're called. Might be wrong with that. But the ones with the little teeth in. So they're gripped inside the plywood and epoxied round. And then I'll use Loctite when the bolts go through so they don't vibrate loose. You might have noticed I've put two little plates here. And that's because there's a lump of carbon inside the model already, which I don't want to file away. So with these two plates being pushed out, it sits nice and flush. Engine bolts through, then I've got the tray. I just need to fit the proper support in there. It should be okay. So before I do that, because I'm waiting for my saw, that's another story. I'm just going to put this in the model now and just see if it works. Okay, so here we are. Now I must admit it's taken me about 45 minutes just to adjust the mount very slightly to get to a point where it's easy to screw the bracket on. But as you can see, there we are, there's two servos. And to be honest with you, they are super stiff right now. I am still going to put that triangular support in there though, because obviously with the vibration, I really don't want those servos coming loose even by a couple of mil. So triangular support, and then of course fuel proof all of the open wood here and the back plate I made just in case we get any fuel spillages. So next up, we can finally work out how the arm's going to go. End up putting a couple of holes through the front here to line up with the choke on this side and also the throttle on this side. But let me take a look at that and I'll show you what we end up with. Oh, and I've also fitted the grommets around these, like I said I would. They'll get glued in once the model's sprayed. Right, let's see if we can get this throttle and choke working. Okay, so rods are connected. I need to tidy up the holes just a little bit. Got this one slightly in the wrong place, I must admit. Done it too low to start off with, but it'll be fine. And then one on the left hand side, and of course the servos in there nice. So the only tricky bit was I made up a new arm, if you like, for the choke here, because the one that comes with it is this one, which as you can see it's just got a big hole on the other side, which is no good for anybody. So I just replaced that, or recreated it even with the square section there. So it go back over the bolt, then normal connection through the bottom, and that's that. So just a little bit of tidying up, but I'm really pleased that's done. That's taken quite a few hours, to be honest with you, probably almost 3, to get the engine mounted, to get the mount made behind, the servos in place, the rods done, but it's done, which is good. So let's have a look at what is next. Before we finish with the front of the model, decided just to put the cowling back on and check it over, and then realised that I haven't put any additional cooling in, so really want to be able to open this up a little bit more so we've got enough air going into the engine, especially towards the carburettor. So having a quick look at what Krill have done to theirs in the instructions, you can see they've put a whole bunch of slits in there and like a triangular section here, but this is obviously for a different engine. So I'm going to do something similar here. So what I thought I'd do with the cowling back on is I can take a centre line from back here, from the seam, all the way through to the front of the spinner, then I can come off, sorry, front of the engine rather, and then I'll come off that centre line to work out where I am. So I'm just going to cover this in masking tape to allow me to draw onto this surface and then start marking out some shapes. Right, after some deliberation, this is what I'm going to go for. I've used the same template here as to what we used before with the other vents. So I thought it just looked a lot smarter. So just 3 on each side. obviously coming off the seam here for the centre line, drew centre line all the way down to the middle of the engine here, and then here is roughly where the carburettor is. So I'm going to also cut this out, making sure I curve the corners. Nice little gap here before they start. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go for. It's personal choice really, isn't it, in the day? Different ways of doing it, but at least it'll match the rear. Not going to overthink it. I'm just going to get that cut out, and then I'll show you it. And here we are. There are the vents as per the template. So as you can see, I've matched in the front ones with the rear ones, just so it looks a little bit nicer. And then we've got the main vent here, which is going to go straight across the top of the carburettor as well. Hopefully encouraging lots of air to go into the carb. And there we go. Right, so I think I'm going to leave the tanks for now until the final fit after the model's sprayed. I probably will put the filler cap on though, find a place for that very shortly. But next up, I really want to get onto the undercarriage and do the spats and get the tail wheel on there as well. So then we can actually finally get the model together and see what it looks like for the first time. Right. Okay guys, so it's time to fit the undercarriage, and hopefully by the end of this part of this video, this is part number 4, we can actually get the model assembled on its wheels and see what it looks like for the very first time. So we're on the home straight. It's undercarriage and then spinner, and hopefully conclude this video and see it all together for the first time. So let's have a look at the undercarriage. So first we'll go into the instructions. Main landing gear to start off with. They don't supply the wheels, so wheels are not included, but I have purchased, again via Aerobatax, via Clive and Mandy, the right wheels for the recommended wheels. And these are aluminium, and they have bearings in the middle of them as well, which is quite nice. And they weigh about 95 grams each, nice hard foam. So looking forward to using those. But everything else comes with it. So undercarriage legs, as you've seen already from part 1. Now the legs themselves, these have been sprayed because, as I said before, the whole model is done in white. It's not in one of their colour schemes at the moment. They're pre-drilled, which is great. And you'll see when we go to the fuselage in a minute that the fuselage has got pre-drilled holes as well with the bolts in there. And they've also stuck some washers on the back of that as well. So that's great. The challenge comes at the other end. So we need to drill a hole through the other end. Now they do say in the instructions, which I'll show you up on the screen now, that you need to drill 8mm drill through for the axle. Axles are supplied, 15mm up from the middle on the center line, and that will give you your first hole. So the first job is to drill that through on both of these legs. Once we've done that, we can then move to the axles, which is pre-supplied. So in this bag you've got the axles, you've got the circlips to keep the wheels on with as well, and then you've got 2 screws in there which are for the tail wheel assembly. Now the tail wheel assembly as well is the recommended one from Krill Aircraft, which is a nice bit of carbon. It isn't pre-drilled, and the fuselage isn't pre-drilled either. But apparently on the later versions of the model, or later builds of the model, they are pre-drilling the fuselage, and they are putting some bolts in there. So although they supply screws in this one, what I might do, depending on the access, is actually put some threaded bolts through with lock nuts on the other side. Just depends on how that works. We've got to take the rudder back off to be able to get this on, but we'll do that after we've done the main wheels. As well, we obviously have the wheel covers, or the spats, which need to be cut out as well. Now they are really nicely indented here, and this fits really well. Don't know if I can see that. Do it upside down. Start that again. There we go. So that slots in really nicely in here, as you can see. So once we've got the axle on through the undercarriage, we can then cut a slot through the middle of this so the axle will slot up, and then we need to do a hole for the bolt, is what I understand at this moment in time. So when we've done that, the very final part of the undercarriage is to fit these covers. So these covers go over the undercarriage. Now these probably won't be fitted properly until they're sprayed, and I can't really see the point in doing them beforehand, which might make it easier to spray. I will check with my good mate who's spraying it for me. But the idea is that these slot over, so they're open at the back. You can just see there, and reinforced with carbon where they are open. And when they're on the model, these will act as a fairing going over like so, to give it a much nicer, in my opinion, a much nicer look. And then probably goop it on both ends to the fuselage and to the spat. So they'll probably go on last, I suspect, at the moment. but we still see what it looks like on, so I just put them on loose. So I think that's all there is to be said so far on the undercarriage. So it doesn't look like a massive job to do, obviously just some delicate bit of drilling and a few delicate cuts in here. I've also got to open up this hole because unfortunately the wheel does not fit in at the moment, so be careful how I'm going to do that to make sure it's nice and even. And I don't want to cut it too fine against here as well, otherwise we might get extra cracks. Just my initial thoughts. I'll probably use tape, pence a line on both sides as well so I can get it even and start opening that up. But first things first, follow the instructions, get the axle onto these. Okay guys, I'm partway through doing the undercarriage now. I've actually got one on. Just want to quickly show you what that looks like and show you how I've actually measured the second one, which is slightly different to the instructions for those of you that are also building this model. So first off, my nice black wheel is no longer nice and black. It's obviously, so I've been sanding and I've got dust everywhere, but that'll clean off. But let me just give you a close up of this. So it's a little bit rough at the moment, but I wanted to just take a little bit more off the inner edge here. And that's really to make sure I can get the spanner in to adjust the nut on the inside. Obviously you put a 10mm spanner on the inside, 13mm nut on the outside. So you need to be able to hold the inside where you tighten up the outside and the whole thing just slots on. But let me show you on the second one as to what's going on here. So I think you can just about see that. So this is the original spat untouched. What I've done is I've drawn a centre line down the middle of this indent here, and I've measured from the top down 33 and also from the bottom of the indent up 19, not from the bottom of the hole. So obviously you're adjusting the hole. You can see here where I plan to adjust this one, where that pencil line is. That's how much material is going to come off on the first fit, which I'll do after I've cut this line. So the idea is to create an 8mm slot up to that line there, and then that will slot on the axle. So the reason why I got 33 and 19, now 19 is in the instructions from the bottom up, but it's not clear as to where the bottom is. So I measured the top here. So the top down, I went 33 down to the centre of this hole, and then double check that it was 19 up roughly to the centre, about focus, there goes, 19 up from the centre of that hole, 33 down from the top, ignore that marker dot there, that was something else, which I'm not using. So that's how I got the measurements. So now I'm going to measure 4mm either side of this line to give me an 8mm slot, and use the Dremel to go straight up the middle, and then I'll sand using the permagrit tools out to the line, and then that should then slot on. Then open up this gap as well. So the idea is put the wheel on the axle slightly loose, because obviously it's got a slot through, and then tighten it up with the spanner once it's in there. So let me get it done and I'll show you what it looks like finished. Okay guys, that's quite a job and I'm glad that's now done. Let me show you what it looks like on the model. So here we are. Model's obviously still upside down. The pre-drilled holes will work fine, no adjustment there. And there we go, there's the spats on. Now these do still need a little bit of tidying up before anybody points that out. Just get the lines a little bit straighter, a little bit smoother, but they're on there. The wheels don't rub. They don't move, well, about 1/2 mil, that's all, which I think is by design. And here's the other one. Again, wheels are a little bit dirty. Just I've been handling them where I've been all sanding, but I'll clean those up with a wet cloth later. And get the spanner in to take them on and off quite easily now. Just about enough room. So that is the main two wheels. So we're almost ready to put the model on its wheels for the first time. However, we're still missing the tail wheels. So let me pull the model out and we'll get that done now. Actually guys, slight change of plan, false alarm. I just want to have a look at what these look like before we go much further. Let's work out what's what. So that's that side. Let's just put these on. I'm obviously not going to glue them on. I just want to slide them on and see what the look is. I'll give you guys a close up. Oh yeah. Changes it, doesn't it? Very nice. Very nice. Let me just show you that quickly. Doesn't that change it completely? Appreciate the model slops, like Darren can't really see it, but I'll leave them on for a minute, just loose, so that when the model's on the ground, we can see what the look is Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Right, now down to the tail wheel. Hey guys, so I've removed the rudder as per the instructions, just double check whether I've got bolts inside here, or sorry, nuts. No, I clearly haven't, because it's not pre-drilled out, so that must be on the slightly newer versions. And also I've got really not much chance of getting them in there, because this is pretty sealed up, not without like making a hole through here. So I'm just going to use the self-tapping screws, which are provided with this kit, to put them through. So I'm going to, first off, I'm going to drill out the tail wheel, or the tail wheel assembly rather. So I've marked it up as per the instructions, so 15mm from the back edge on the centre line, 50mm gap between the holes. I'm going to be using these screws, which I say come with it. And there you go, there's the instructions just to show you. That's basically what we're doing. Going to put a 4mm hole through, and then I'm going to go and mark that on the fuselage and just put a smaller hole through, because obviously we're going to tap into it. And hopefully that'll do the job. And there we go. The tail wheel, or tail assembly rather, is fitted. Self-tappers, they've gone up nice and tight, so I don't think I've got any concerns with them. We've still got to work out what we're doing with the actual wheel itself, whether we're going to use some springs to come back to the rudder. Like I say, the instructions say don't worry about it, it's free turning enough. I'm just not sure, but maybe I'll try it as it is and work out after that. Right, let's see what's next. Okay guys, so the next job, and I think the last big job really, is fitting the prop and the spinner. And normally these shouldn't be big jobs, but in my case, here's the prop, lovely Falcon propeller, carbon fibre. It needs drilling out. Let me show you this. A little close up of that. Absolutely gorgeous, but it's not pre-drilled. I will just look up the size of that for anybody that's interested. Can't remember what I brought now. 28 by 11. That's nice 28 by 11. Oh yeah, it's on here. 28 by 11. So I've got to drill that out. I've got to drill it out for this plate. So that's 6 bolts through, because that will sit on the front, of course, to hold it in place and go all the way through to the engine. So that's not too bad to do, relatively easy. Slightly trickier one though is the carbon fibre spinner. So it currently has no slots in it for the prop, and it needs to be drilled out on the back as well. So back plate not too bad, because we're doing the prop as well, doing the propeller. I'm not yet sure on how to do these, so I'm going to have a little think about that. Drill this out first, have a think, then I'll let you know what the plan is. Hey guys, I've come outside to the garden to see if we can put the model together for the first time. I must admit, it's looking absolutely great. Let's take a closer look. So here she is, together for the very first time. Probably about 90% finished if you ignore the fact it's not painted yet. But there we go, just have a look around. Really pleased with it, seeing it together for the first time. I will admit I've made a little mistake, and that's I've got to change the wiring that's inside these. I don't know what I've done there, but I must have them upside down when I did the wiring on the bench, or the wrong way around. I've got the wrong connector one end, but that's just a case of making up 2 new extension leads inside, but that's easy enough to do. Obviously not cut the spinner yet either, and again, to be really honest with you, it's because I just made a mistake when I was drilling out the prop, which I've not showed you. Just didn't quite have the prop lined up properly, drilled all the holes correctly, but didn't account for the lugs on the spinner, the back plate, so the prop won't go on with the spinner on the right position. So new prop, costly mistake, but you learn from these things. There we go, you can see the engine's still obviously in there, vents are looking good. I've not got the pipes in yet, they'll go in for the final fit. I've not done the smoke system yet either. And then the only other thing that I need to do as well is mount the switch on the outside, so the main on-off switch. Obviously the system's not in there at the moment, it's still taking the tray back out, but I need to, before it goes to spray, mount the switch and also mount the fuel as well for the fuel dots, effectively for the smoke. So not sure where I'm going to put them yet. I might go on top here like on my extra, or put it on the side. If it's on the side, I'll probably do the same side as where the switch goes, and also do the plugs for the ailerons as well. I've not done those, so a couple of small things to do, and then it'll be ready for paint. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Hey guys, so we're pretty much there for part 4 of the Ultimate build. I am really pleased with how the model's come along. Hope you enjoyed the build series so far, but we're not finished yet. I am slightly annoyed with myself for just drilling the prop incorrectly a minute ago. I was too busy trying to get my pillar drill working, fixing that. And once that was fixed, I was like, yep, drill. So what's actually happened, obviously the back plate I had to drill out as well. That's got lugs on it, which is how the spinner attaches. What I didn't do was align the prop to the back plate before drilling out the prop. So now when the prop goes on, it actually hits the lugs rather than going in between the lugs. Expensive mistake. About 135 quid for a new prop. This one will look good. Up on the cabinet for sure. Never mind, it happens, you know, part of the hobby. We do make mistakes from time to time. Not the end of the world. Get a new prop and be done. So next thing for me then is to strip down the Ultimate, take everything back out of it and get it ready for spraying basically. So I'll be passing this over to a good friend of mine who's volunteered. Say volunteered, a little bit of persuasion, but volunteered to spray it for me. He's a really good sprayer, so I just can't wait just to give it to him. And in the meantime, I'll get on some projects. And then next time you see it, it'll be back from the spray shop. We'll have a good look at it. And then we'll crack on with just doing the final install. And then maybe even running up the engine as well for the first time. We'll get really close to that maiden. Guys, thanks for joining me this time around. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.